Can you imagine waiting all day, your heart pounding with excitement, for your daughter to call you on your birthday, and when the phone finally rings, it is not to wish you well, but to ask you for money? That happened to me. The day I needed affection the most, I was faced with a painful truth. To my own daughter, I was more of an ATM than a mother, but what she never imagined is that this wound would become my strength. Today, I am going to tell you how that moment changed my life, how I learned to set boundaries and get my dignity back. Stay until the end, because what I lived through could also be your story. Before we start, subscribe right now and activate the bell. Because here we share real stories that can open your eyes and give you back the strength you thought you had lost. Today, my heart woke up before my body, as if my years knew the date better than the calendar. I put on a fresh pot of coffee and laid out the good tablecloth, the one I saved for visitors who hardly come anymore. My cell phone rested on the table like a silent little bird, not vibrating, no light. I took a deep breath and told myself, "Calm down, Susan, it is still early." At 63, I do not lack anything material, but there are holes that savings cannot fill. I opened the window and the neighborhood sun came in, warm, steady, like every other day. Today, I wanted it to be different. Just a, "Mom, happy birthday." And yet, the house was filled with that new kind of silence, the kind that has weight. I poured my coffee and counted spoonfuls of sugar as if they were memories. Before, my living room was filled with laughter, with impromptu flowers, with hugs that smelled like family. Now it is just me and my complete set of dishes, the one I bought with pleasure because I can and because I deserve it. I have my accounts in order, my expenses paid, my independence with no debt, but loneliness does not understand bank statements. I looked at the clock and looked at the cell phone again. Nothing yet. Megan is probably busy. She will call later, I told myself, so it would not hurt. I put on earrings, combed my hair calmly, as if preparing for a visit that might not come. Megan, my girl with the bright name, always in a hurry, with her perfect schedule. The world grows and gestures shrink, I think, but I bite my tongue. I bought a small vanilla cake, just in case she showed up in a rush, with no time. I left it in the fridge next to a bottle of wine I rarely open. I am not a needy mother. That is not my story. I have my own things. I made them for myself. But sometimes, dignity also wants a simple hug. I started straightening the couch pillows, as if straightening fabrics could straighten thoughts. The silence was still there, sitting next to me, very comfortable. I looked at the framed photo of Megan's graduation, and my eyes burned. That day, I sold a ring to pay for the prom dress and makeup she wanted. It was not a burden. A mother does her accounting with her heart. I also remembered the down payment on her car, the security deposit on her apartment, the emergencies. I am not a martyr. I do not play that game. I did it because I could and because I wanted to. But today, I just wanted a call with my name, said softly. I squeezed the cell phone in my hands, warm, useless. Every silent minute was a soft, repeated blow. I went to the kitchen and cut a tiny slice of the cake, just in case someone arrived and found me celebrating. I laughed quietly at my own sad joke. I lit a small candle and thought about making a child's wish, one of those impossible ones. For the house to be full again, for my voice not to tremble at the obvious. "Happy birthday, Susan," I said to myself in the mirror, and it sounded hollow. Then, finally, the cell phone vibrated as if it woke up suddenly. My heart leaped before my hands did. I answered with a smile already prepared, ready to forgive the delay. "Mom, are you there?" said Megan's voice, rushed, with the echo of the street. "Yes, honey," I replied, arranging my joy like someone arranges flowers. I waited for the happy birthday, the small, basic one. It did not come. Instead, a list came through. Destination, hotel, dates, promotions. She told me about the honeymoon, how wonderful it would be, how little was missing. She said, "You know you are the only one who can help me, like someone opening a familiar door." I stayed quiet, the smile still on my face, but now without its shine. "I would need you to help me with the payment, today if possible, because the offer ends," she finished. I looked at the candle burning down in the dining room, a thin wisp of smoke rising slowly. Today? I repeated softly, in case I had misheard. Yes, today, Mom. Can you? You are the only one who is financially stable, she said with technical affection. She explained numbers, told me what was fair. You have always supported us. I nodded, even though she could not see me, a useless gesture in the air. A lump formed in my throat that was not about money, and still, my first reaction was to think, of course I can. I can because I am not lacking, because I managed my money, because I worked hard. I can because that is what mothers are for, I tell myself, like an inherited phrase. I can, but it is funny that she called today, I thought quietly. Do you know what day it is today, honey? I asked, gently, more curious than hurt. There was a minimal pause on the other side, the kind that does not weigh anything. Oh yeah, I know. I will call you back properly later, okay? It is just that I am totally slammed, she said on the fly. And she went back to the list of hotels, the included breakfast, the perfect dream. I looked at my tablecloth and felt that the coffee had gone cold without me noticing. I found myself thinking about transfers, screenshots, solving the problem. My hands were shaking, not because of the amount, but because of the way it was done. I will make the transfer this afternoon, I said, buying myself time with my own voice. She breathed a sigh of relief, as if she had just hung a heavy bag on my shoulders. I knew I could count on you, Mom, and she gave me a kiss over the phone that sounded distant. I will call you later for the details, she promised, scatterbrained, without stopping. I did not know what to say that would not hurt. I nodded again to the air and hung up slowly, as if dragging out the gesture would change anything. The house returned to its silence, but it was not the same. Now it smelled like a party light being switched off, like a candle without a song. I stared at the cake as if it were an awkward witness. I thought about sending her a text reminding her of the day. Then I deleted it. I did not want to sound needy. I did not want to sound demanding. How strange that a mother has to choose between her dignity and a hug, I thought. I opened the window again. The sun was still the same. I was not. The question settled in the living room. What am I really paying for? I went to the bedroom and took out the notebook where I write down my tasks. Between doctor's appointments and grocery lists, I wrote, Megan transfer, hotel. My handwriting came out straight, as if nothing was trembling. I put the notebook away and sat on the edge of the bed, my feet dangling. I do not lack resources, I lack gestures, I said without a sound. My mother came to mind, her weathered hands, the way she looked at me when she set boundaries. Affection is not blind obedience, she would have told me. And I felt something very small but alive move inside me. I went back to the dining room and poured another cup, this time without sugar. I wanted to taste the bitterness, to see if it would wake up another part of me. I ran my finger along the rim of the plate, an old habit, and smiled without joy. I did not want to fight. Not today, not with myself. But the words, what was fair, stuck to the wall. Fair, I thought, would be remembering me on my day without a shopping list. Fair would be a hug, and then we talk numbers. And I found myself tired, not of the expense, but of the way it was done. A message pinged, a promotion from the bank. The universe's ironies. Another message. My neighbor Brenda. Girl, come over this afternoon. I will sing Happy Birthday to you. I sent her a heart and a thanks, sweetie, and I felt seen by someone. I checked the time. Megan would not call back soon. I know her. I saw myself from the outside, a well-dressed woman with her nice house and her tiny sliced cake. Not poor, not a victim, but split in two. I thought about how easy it would be to say yes without thinking. And yet, the living thread inside asked me to wait. I opened the fridge, put the cake away, and poured myself cold water. The glass was sweating, and so was I, even though the weather was mild. I spoke to myself softly, like to a child. Do not be afraid of feeling. I am not going to be dramatic, I told myself, and laughed at how absurd that phrase sounded in my empty house. The only thing I wanted was to belong to my own birthday. Maybe later, maybe tomorrow, maybe with less of a rush. I pressed my forehead against the fridge door and breathed, counting to 10. The thread inside me was not so small anymore. I sat with the notebook again and, under transfer, I wrote a question. How much does my peace cost? I looked at it for a long time, as if the answer could write itself. This is not about the money, Susan, not today. I told myself with a clarity I did not recognize. I have resources and I can help, but I also have the right not to feel used. Maybe this is not a fight. Maybe it is a conversation I have never had. The word conversation surprised me. It sounded less harsh than complaint. I closed the notebook like someone guarding a new secret, and I knew the afternoon would not be the same as the morning. I looked at my outfit in the mirror, a nice blouse, comfortable pants, shoes that do not hurt. I thought I looked good, and I thought it without shame, like a quiet truth. I grabbed my keys and went down to the market for flowers. I wanted color in the dining room. The lady at the flower stand said, "Happy birthday, ma'am. Many more." I bought 2 bouquets of sunflowers and felt my chest open up a little. Sometimes all it takes is for someone to look you in the eye, for you to remember who you are. I came back with the stems dripping water, and the house smelled new to me. I put on quiet music, old love songs, and the afternoon settled in. I put the sunflowers in a vase, and the living room's mood changed. I poured myself a small glass of wine and toasted myself. Because, yes, Susan. I sat down to write 3 things to be thankful for, an old habit I had forgotten. I wrote, health, my own home, strength. The 4th word stayed on the tip of the pencil. Boundaries. I was a little afraid to write it, but my hand moved ahead. Boundaries, I repeated, and the echo in the house sounded firm. Maybe I was finally going to learn to say them out loud. The cell phone vibrated again. It was Megan, a short audio message. Mom, sending you the link to the hotel. Thanks. Love you. I heard the love you, and it pricked me sweetly, but it did not numb the pain. I opened the link and saw perfect photos of blue beaches and enormous beds. I did not hate any of it. On the contrary, I was happy because life is also about enjoyment. It is just that today, I wanted something else from my daughter. Presence. I stared at the screen until the brightness dimmed on its own. Then, without rushing, I turned off the cell phone and let the house breathe with me. Something was changing, and it had nothing to do with the amount. I did not make any final decision that afternoon, and that was new for me too. I decided to give myself time, like someone gives themselves flowers. I walked through the house, touched the chair backs, opened curtains, let in the last of the sundae. The cake returned to the table, and I cut another slice, a bigger one this time. Happy birthday, Susan, I repeated, and it did not sound so hollow. I saved my tears for another day. Today I wanted clarity. I am not going to close this story with an automatic yes. Tomorrow, when Megan calls me, I will have something different to say. When I heard the phone ring that morning, I felt my heart jump like it used to, back when I was waiting for good news. My hand trembled a little, not from age, but from accumulated hope. I thought, it is finally her, she remembered. She is going to sing happy birthday to me, even if it is rushed. I quickly fixed my hair, as if she could see me through the screen. I answered with a cheerful voice, prepared to hear a, happy birthday, Mama. But instead, Megan's hurried voice came through, muffled by street noise. Mom, can you hear me? I need you to do me a huge favor. I felt the hope drain out of me like water through my fingers. At first, I did not really understand. I thought she was going to ask me to come over for dinner, or to wait for her to cut a cake together. But she started talking about trips, about deals, about a hotel she had to pay for right now. I breathed slowly, trying to gather my thoughts. Do you know what day it is today, honey? I dared to ask, my voice quieter than I wanted. There was a weird silence, as if she had not heard. Then she answered quickly. Yeah, I know. But I need to solve this right now. It is important. Her tone held no tenderness. It held urgency. And my heart, which had been expecting flowers, received invoices. While she talked about beaches and honeymoon packages, I looked at my set table, untouched, waiting for company. The contrast hit me in the chest like a dull thud. Can you help me out, Mom? You are the only one who can do it without a problem, she insisted. Her words sounded true, because yes, I could, but something inside me whispered. And what do I do with what she did not give me? I wanted to interrupt her, to tell her that first and foremost she should give me a hug, even if just with her voice. I did not do it. I swallowed the complaint, like always. And I just said, "Let me think about it, honey." Megan kept talking, detailing the hotel, the ocean view, the included breakfasts. I listened, but my mind traveled to another place, to my childhood, to my mother, to how she taught me that respect comes first. I remembered when we used to bring her flowers and a cake, even when we did not have much money. It was our way of saying, "We are here with you." Now I, with everything sorted, no debts, no shortages, was waiting for that same minimal gesture. "Is it because the promotion ends today, Mom? Will you help me?" she repeated. Her voice sounded sweet, but not loving. I felt it in silence, swallowing the emptiness. The world around me seemed to be mocking me. My uncut cake, my unlit candle, my still fresh sunflowers. Everything ready for a celebration that did not exist. "Of course I can help you," I finally said, with a lump in my throat. She sighed in relief, as if a weight had been lifted from her. "I knew I could count on you, Mom. I am sending you the link so you can pay for it." I replied, "Yes, honey." But inside me that word felt like a betrayal of myself. I closed my eyes and saw myself from the outside. A strong woman reduced to an automated teller machine. And anger began to mix with the sadness. When I hung up, I was left holding the cell phone, still warm from the call. It hurt to think that instead of a happy birthday, I had received a price list. I paced the living room again and again, like a caged lion. "Is that what I am to her?" I asked the air, not expecting an answer. The silence answered me with cruelty. I turned on the television to distract myself, but everything sounded distant. Not even the noise filled that void, and I found myself missing even a scolding from my mother, who is no longer here. The afternoon was heavy, as if each hour stretched longer than normal. I opened the link Megan had sent me and saw the hotel photos. White sheets, blue ocean, clinking glasses. I closed the page quickly because I felt I was looking at something that was not mine. I could take a trip like that myself, I thought. Why did I never consider it? It was always my daughter first, then me. And now, apparently, I did not even figure on her list of priorities. The wine in my glass tasted more bitter than before, and an inner voice told me, "This cannot go on." I found myself thinking about everything I had given, the car, the tuition, the moving expenses, the emergencies. Every time without hesitation, because that is what being a mother is about. But at what point did it become an obligation? At what point did it stop being gratitude and become a demand? It burned me to accept that on this special day, my day, she had not had even 1 minute for me. I wondered if it was my fault for getting her so used to it, for never setting boundaries. And that word, boundaries, started echoing in my head. Night fell, and with it, the certainty that Megan would not call me back that day. Not even a text with balloons, not a picture, nothing. The birthday had passed like any boring Tuesday. I went to bed with the cell phone on the nightstand, still waiting for a notification that never came. The room smelled like flowers, but I felt wilted. I closed my eyes and heard my mother's voice. "Love is shown with actions, not empty words." I fell asleep with a knot in my stomach, a mix of love, anger, and disappointment, and with a seed inside me that was beginning to wake up. All day next, Megan texted me again about the hotel, as if nothing had happened. I replied with single syllables, measuring every letter. She did not notice my coldness or did not want to notice. "We will figure it out, right?" she said. I put the cell phone in the drawer and let it ring without opening it. It was not rebellion. It was exhaustion. And I found myself wanting something new. Silence, but a peaceful silence, not a forgotten one. A silence that was starting to be mine, not imposed. On the table, there were still fresh sunflowers, and I looked at them for a long time. They were witnesses to my own awakening. Maybe I did not have the courage yet to say everything I was thinking. But the seed of that boundary was growing. I could no longer ignore the injustice disguised as habit. It hurt, yes, but it also gave me strength. I knew that unexpected call had opened a wound, but also a door. And behind that door was a different woman I was about to meet. I spent that whole day with a question stuck in my chest. What do I do? The easy answer was to say yes and transfer the money like always. But deep down, I knew that every yes from me was costing me a piece of dignity. This was not about whether I could, because I can, thank God. It was about how she asked me, as if it were my obligation and not a gesture of love. I looked at myself in the mirror and saw the same old smile, the one that hides what I feel. That smile that saved me from arguments so many times. But now, I was starting to get tired of even my own reflection. I made myself some tea to calm the anxiety, but I could not even taste it. I stared at the cup as if I could read the answers I could not find in it. Should I keep quiet? Should I keep giving? I asked myself in a low voice. I remembered when Megan was a little girl and asked me for things with those tender little eyes. How I ran to give her what I could, even if I did not have enough. That memory hurt me, because it made me feel guilty for hesitating now. But I also wondered, does she even remember those sacrifices? Or does she only remember that whenever she asks, she receives? Two voices were fighting in my heart. One said, "She is your daughter, do not be harsh, help her." The other one screamed, "Enough already, you are not her bank, you are her mother." That internal war was wearing me out more than any financial problem. Because money is earned, spent, recovered, but disrespect, that is not easily replaced. I felt that if I gave in again, I would end up erasing myself completely, and I did not want to become a shadow in my own home. I sat in the living room and reviewed my life, as if searching the past for the strength to decide. I remembered when I was widowed and promised myself that nothing would break me. I remembered the times I was told I could not make it alone and how I pushed through. I have been strong, I repeated to myself. I have been able to support myself and support her. So why do I feel so weak in the face of one phone call now? Maybe because I did not expect the wound to come from her. You protect yourself from strangers, not from your children. Therein lies the trap of a mother's heart. Megan called me again that afternoon, insistent, as if there was no other topic than the trip. Her voice sounded sweet, but it had no space for me, only for the urgency. She asked me to trust her, that it was just one last favor. I laughed internally. Last? I have heard that so many times. My throat wanted to scream what I felt, but habit tied me down. "Let me think about it," I repeated, to buy time. She sighed, annoyed, as if my hesitation was a betrayal, and she hung up in a hurry, leaving me with an even greater emptiness. I stared at the black screen of the cell phone, which reflected my tired face. I thought, what kind of mother am I if it hurts me to help her? And I immediately answered myself, a mother who is also a person. Because we were always taught that mothers must give without measure, that being quiet and enduring is part of love. But I was no longer so sure that this was true love. True love, I believe, should have gratitude. And that is an ingredient I have not tasted from my daughter in a long time. That night, I barely slept, turning the same dilemma over and over. I would open my eyes in the dark and see the shadows on the wall. I felt like those shadows, present but invisible. I wondered if Megan knew what she was causing in me, or if she just saw it as normal, because I always allowed it. In my chest, there was a mix of anger and tenderness that confused me. I loved her, of course I did, but she also hurt me. And love, when it hurts this much, stops being love. It becomes a burden. At dawn, I decided to write what I felt in my notebook, as if it were a letter. "I am not a credit card. I am your mother," I wrote, and tears fell as I saw it. Writing it made me realize how clear it was inside me. It was not the first time she had asked me for money, but it was the first time it felt like abuse. And that made a huge difference. It was as if I had suddenly opened my eyes after years of walking in the dark. The smudged ink on the paper showed me my own truth, a truth I could no longer deny. I was tempted to erase what I wrote, as if leaving it on paper was too harsh, but then I thought that maybe this paper was the beginning of my freedom, that I was finally learning to name what was happening to me. I put the notebook in a drawer, trembling a little, because I knew that sooner or later I would have to talk to her. And that conversation was not going to be easy. The dilemma was no longer just whether to give her the money or not. The dilemma was whether I was willing to get my voice back. While I ate breakfast alone, the question kept circling. What hurts me more, telling her no or continuing to say yes? because either answer would bring consequences. If I said no, she might pull away, get angry, judge me. If I said yes, I would continue to feed the injustice. I bit my lip, as if searching for strength. The coffee tasted bitter even though I put sugar in it, and I knew that sooner or later I would have to choose between her and me. The house was quiet, but inside me there was a storm. The dilemma followed me with every step, like a shadow glued to my side. I tried to distract myself by cleaning, sweeping, dusting, but even the dust spoke to me of the decision I did not want to make. The phone rang from time to time, and I looked at it with fear and hope. Every ring was a reminder of my silence. An internal battle that no one saw, but that was splitting me in two. And I knew I could not hold it together for much longer. When I think of Megan, I cannot help but remember everything I went through to see her happy. I am not exaggerating when I say I worked day and night, so she would not lack anything. I remember those early mornings when I would leave with my eyes swollen with sleep. While she slept in her little princess bed, I was sweeping offices to earn extra. The cold of the streets was my companion, but I smiled, imagining her happy little face. That memory fills me with tenderness, but also sadness now. Because I feel that all that effort today only weighs on my memory. She seems to have erased it from hers. When Megan turned 16, I had no idea how I was going to pay for the party. I sold a couple of pieces of jewelry inherited from my mother, the only ones I had. They were more than gold, they were memories, they were roots. But I did it without thinking, because my daughter deserved to feel like a queen that day, and I watched her dance her waltz with a radiant smile while I hid my tears. Tears of pride, yes, but also of exhaustion. I thought, it was worth it. Today, I wonder if she remembers it with the same love I do. I also think of when she went to college. The money was not enough, but I managed to cover everything. I accepted double shifts. I stopped buying new clothes for myself for years. I did not want her to feel ashamed in front of her classmates. I remember how I ran from one job to another, eating on my feet, without rest. And still, when I got home, I smiled seeing her study. That sacrifice seemed sweet to me then. Today, it seems like a debt she never acknowledged. When she wanted her first car, she told me it was necessary for her major, and I, without thinking, financed it with my savings. It was money saved for my old age, but I preferred to give it to her. The excitement on her face was my payment at that moment, and I kept telling myself, one day she will thank me with actions, not words. That one day still has not arrived. Sometimes I think I confused love with obligation, and that she learned that wrong lesson from me. I also remember when I got sick with anxiety a few years ago. The doctor told me I had to slow down, that my body could not take it anymore. But how could I stop if Megan still needed me? I kept going, swallowing pills and herbal teas. Exhaustion was my shadow, but I hid it behind smiles. I did not want her to see me weak. I preferred her to think her mother was made of iron, even though I was breaking inside. I think about the number of times I gave up on my own dreams. There was always a bigger priority. Her school, her trips, her cravings. I wanted to see other countries, to walk without rushing, to learn new things, but every dollar ended up in her hands. I do not regret it, because I did it with love. What hurts me is that she does not seem to see it now, as if all of it was normal, as if she just deserved it. And I, in silence, fed that habit. There was a time when I thought she admired me. She used to tell me as a child, "My mom is the strongest." That phrase was my fuel when I could not go on. But now I feel that strength has turned against me. Because the stronger she saw me, the more she demanded of me, as if I never had the right to get tired, as if I did not need a little care too. And that weighs on me more than any bill. I remember the graduation dress she wanted so badly. I could not afford it and had to borrow from a friend. I was embarrassed, but I did not hesitate. That day I saw her enter the auditorium with her head held high, sure of herself. And I felt fulfilled, even though my shoes were worn out. People congratulated me on my daughter. Nobody saw my hidden sacrifices. I smiled proudly, but inside I wondered, until when? Now I know I never answered that until when for myself. I also remember the small moments, the most intimate ones. like when I brought her hot chocolate after a difficult exam, or when I knitted sweaters for her on cold nights. They were simple gestures but full of love, gestos that did not cost much money but cost time and heart. I wonder if those details are stored somewhere in her memory, or if they were erased by the rush of adult life. I still hold them like invisible treasures. Every memory hurts and makes me proud at the same time. It hurts because I feel she does not value them. It makes me proud because I know I was always able to get back up. I am aware of everything I gave, and that makes me strong. But it also makes me vulnerable because I did not receive the same in return. It is an emptiness that no bank account can fill, and that no trip to the Caribbean can justify. Love is measured in gratitude, and I am short on that currency. Sometimes I think how different it would have been if I had set boundaries from the beginning. If I had taught her that love is not measured in things, but in respect, maybe we would not be in this situation now. Maybe she would see me with different eyes. But I cannot turn back time. The only thing I can do is learn from my own mistakes and decide that I will not continue in the same cycle, because my story can still change. When I close my eyes, I see my mother again. Her worn hands, her firm eyes, her clear voice. She knew how to say no when necessary. She taught me through her actions that dignity is worth more than any gift. I did not follow her example, and today I am paying for it, but I still have time. I repeat this to myself every day. I am not a defeated old woman. I am a living, conscious woman, and I have the right to choose another way to love. Megan came to see me a few days later with the same hurry she always has. She walked into the house talking about the heat, the traffic, how much she had to do. She had her cell phone in her hand, her eyes on the screen, and a huge purse hanging from her shoulder. I watched her, waiting for at least a hug, a small gesture. I approached with my arms open, but she barely gave me a quick kiss on the cheek. "Did you see the hotel info, Mom?" was the first thing she said, without looking me in the eye. My heart sank because she did not even mention my recent birthday. I felt the air in the living room turn colder than ever. I had prepared coffee and cookies, like I always do when she visits. I wanted her to sit down, for us to talk about us, not just expenses. But Megan arranged her things on the table and opened her laptop. She showed me photos, numbers, budgets, as if I were just another executive. I listened silently, feeling like a spectator in my own home. "It is a unique opportunity, Mom. We cannot let it pass," she insisted. Her enthusiasm was not for seeing me. It was for closing a deal, and I felt like the required signature on an invisible contract. I tried to say something about the birthday, about how much I had looked forward to it. My voice came out quiet, shaky. "Honey, that day, it hurt me that you did not." She interrupted me with a wave of her hand without looking up from the screen. "Yeah, Mom, I know. Sorry. I was just swamped. You understand." That phrase cut through me like a knife, because it was not an apology, it was an excuse. And I was tired of excuses. The coffee in my cup was getting cold, just like my patience. Megan kept talking about dates, flights, itineraries. Her voice sounded happy, almost childish, like when she used to dream as a little girl. That broke my heart, seeing that the emotion I looked for from her was now given to material things. "So you will help me, right? I need you to confirm now," she finally said. I looked at her in silence, trying to find a trace of the daughter I raised in her face. I saw a grown woman, but still leaning on me as if she were 10 years old, and I asked myself, who failed? Her for asking, or me for never setting boundaries? The pain was suffocating me, but I still could not say what I was thinking. The conversation became a monologue on her part. I barely responded with, "Uh-huh. Yes, I understand." Inside, I was screaming with frustration. I wanted to bang on the table and tell her, "Look at me, I am your mother, not your ATM." But my mouth was sealed by years of habit, and my silence, instead of being a protest, seemed like approval. Megan did not notice my blank expression. Or maybe she did, but did not care. "I swear this will be the last expense, Mom," she told me in a syrupy tone. That phrase sounded like a repetition, a promise broken so many times before. I listened with a heavy heart, knowing it was not true. Because there was always something else, there would always be another emergency. I wanted to ask her when she was going to give something to me, but the words would not come out, because I was afraid of losing her. That fear had me chained. More than to the money, I was tied to her conditional affection. Suddenly, she got up to answer a call and left me talking to myself. I looked at the table, the untouched coffee, the hard cookies, the open laptop. It was as if my home had turned into an office, as if my motherhood was reduced to numbers and transfers. I got up slowly, went to the window, and took a deep breath. I felt the fresh air bring me back a little clarity. I saw people passing by outside with their own problems and wondered if anyone else was living through the same thing I was. When she sat back down, she took my hand like she did as a child. "I trust you, Mom. You always save me," she said with calculated tenderness. That gesture, which used to fill me with pride, now tore me apart because I understood it was not pure love. It was dependency in disguise, and I was tired of always saving her. I felt my eyes fill with tears, but I did not let them fall. I did not want to appear weak in front of her, even though I was breaking apart inside. I tried to change the subject, to ask about her life, how she was. She answered with short phrases, like someone checking off a task, and then went right back to the trip again. I realized there was no space for me in that conversation. Not for my feelings, not for my birthday, not for my loneliness, only for her plans. It was as if I were one more step on the ladder to her happiness, and that discovery left me cold. Al despedirse, me abrazó rápido y me dijo, "Do not worry, I will let you know." She did not even look me in the eye. She left with the same rush she had entered with, leaving behind her expensive perfume. I was left alone in the living room, with the cold coffee and untouched cookies. I closed the door slowly, as if the noise could break me further. I leaned my back against the wood and breathed deeply. And for the first time in a long time, I felt that something inside me was about to explode. I could not stay silent anymore. After that visit from Megan, I thought I would at least get a break. But no, the week was just beginning, and the phone rang again. This time it was my sister, asking me to help her with a temporary loan. She said she would pay me back soon, as always. I listened to her words and felt they were an echo of the same thing I had heard 1,000 times. "You are the only one who can help me," she insisted, and I, with my soft heart, did not know how to tell her I was already tired. Not just of giving money, but of feeling used. I hung up that call and was barely breathing easily when it rang again. It was my nephew, asking me to help him with his overdue rent. He spoke to me in that cool aunt tone, knowing that I almost never say no. I promised him I would think about it, but my stomach was churning with helplessness. I realized that my generosity had become a curse. Instead of gratitude, I received demands. Instead of affection, I received bills to pay. And every favor was another chain around my neck. That afternoon, I sat at the table with my account book. I wrote down all the loans, help, and favors I had given in the last few months. The list seemed endless, longer than I imagined. Cold numbers that told a story of abuse disguised as affection. I looked at the grand total and felt dizzy. It was not that I was short on money. Thank God I am still stable. It was that I was short on peace, and I understood that the real debt was emotional. I started to ask myself, what do they all have in common? And the answer hit me hard. They know I do not know how to say no. That has been my biggest mistake. I confused love with eternal availability. I taught them to see me as the easy solution to all their problems, while I kept mine locked away in silence. Suddenly I felt rage, but not at them. At myself, for allowing it for so long. That night, while I ate dinner alone, I remembered something that hurt even more. The favors never stopped at just money. They also asked for my time, my attention, my care, and when I needed company, the house was empty. Nobody called to ask how I was, only to ask how much I could give. That truth burned like hot coals. It made me realize it was not one forgotten birthday. No, it was an entire forgotten life, and that I myself had erased me by always putting them first. The next day, Megan insisted again about the hotel. Her voice sounded anxious, as if the world would end if I did not make the transfer. I breathed deeply, trying not to give in immediately. "Let me organize my things, honey. I cannot decide that fast," I told her. She sighed heavily, like a spoiled child. "You are always busy when I need you," she complained. That sentence pierced me like a poisoned arrow because it was exactly the opposite. I was always available for her. I was left thinking about how I had gotten to this point. At what moment did I let the habit of giving become an obligation? I remembered that when I was young, I promised myself I would never depend on anyone. And yet, now they were the ones depending on me. I, who had worked so hard for my independence, was a prisoner of their needs. And the price of my silence was too high. That idea started to give me strength. For the first time in years, I thought, I have the right to stop this. While I was washing the dishes, I found myself talking aloud. What would happen if I tell them no? The echo in the kitchen sounded strange, as if I did not recognize my own voice. I had never dared to pronounce that simple word. No. It was short, hard, definitive. But I was afraid that by saying it, I would end up alone. That was the fear that had me trapped. That night, I dreamed of my mother. I saw her standing there with her apron and her firm gaze. She told me, "Susan, love is not shown by giving everything away. Love is shown by teaching others to value you." I woke up sweating, with tears in my eyes, but also with a clarity I had not felt in years. My mother was right, she always was. And I, at 63 years old, could still learn that lesson. I got up more determined than ever. I made coffee and sat down to think about what I was going to say. I could not keep allowing every call to be an invoice. I had to get my voice back, even if it trembled, because I was sick of being the strong woman only for others. I wanted to be strong for myself, too, and I knew the moment to set that boundary was coming soon. There was no turning back. The phone rang again at noon. This time, I did not answer it right away. I watched it vibrate on the table, as if it were a test. My heart was pounding, but I did not touch it. I let it ring, and ring until it stopped. And for the first time, I felt relief, not guilt. That silence tasted like freedom, and I understood that the favor that never ends would only stop when I said, "Enough." The break did not come with screams. It came in silence. I realized it when I woke up without fear of her next call. The exhaustion was no longer fog. It was clarity. I do not want to keep living with guilt as my alarm clock. I am a mother, yes, but I am also a woman. I have the right to take care of myself without asking permission. That thought scared me and embraced me at the same time. I knew something in me would never bow down again. I looked at myself in the mirror with patience, not judgment. I saw wrinkles that tell stories and eyes that still shine. I said my full name to really hear myself. "Susan, you deserve respect." I repeated it until I believed it. I put my hands on my chest to feel my pulse. I was not weak. I was tired of pretending. Strength is not enduring. It is deciding. That day, I began to decide on myself. I opened my notebook and drew 2 columns. Yes and no. In the yes column, I listed everything I gave away without measure. In the no column, I wrote what I forbade myself, saying no to resting, no to asking, no to crying. The no column hurt more than the bank account. I understood that the abuse had started with me. I left myself for last like leftovers from the market. That inventory was my first private complaint. I closed my eyes and spoke with my mother's voice. She told me clearly, love without limits wears out. You are not betraying your daughter, you are rescuing yourself. If you do not respect yourself, they will not respect you. I felt her firm hand on my back, without reproach. She did not ask for heroism. She asked for coherence. Coherence hurts at first, like a thorn. Then it becomes a spine to hold up the house. I rehearsed the phrase I never said in front of the mirror. "Honey, this time I am not going to pay for your honeymoon." Just reading it on my lips took my breath away. I was afraid she would get angry, that she would stop talking to me. I was afraid I would be alone on my next birthday. But I was also afraid of being left alone with myself, for giving in. The loneliness from saying no hurts differently than the loneliness from surrendering. I chose the one that keeps me whole. The cell phone vibrated, and I saw her name light up the screen. I did not answer on the first try. I breathed, counting to 10. It rang again, and I kept breathing. I discovered that the world does not end just because you wait. The anxiety deflated like an old balloon. I was controlling the rhythm, not anyone else's urgency. I answered when my voice was steady. That itself was a change. I opened the banking app and looked at my numbers without guilt. The balance was fine, but my peace was priceless. I thought about a new budget, boundaries included. If I help, it will be with clear conditions and dates. If not, it will be no, without stories or endless explanations. I put my card away like someone guarding a talisman. The tool is mine, not theirs. I felt the pleasant weight of autonomy again. I wrote a letter to Megan that I might never send. I told her how I felt on my birthday. I explained that helping is not paying for her silence. That I want presence, not urgent requests at a discount. I told her I love her, but that I love myself too. Every line untied a knot in my stomach. I ended with a sentence that has held me up until now. I folded the letter and put it in the drawer with the serious things. I made a list of new rules, simple and human. No loans without a written date and amount. No urgent favors on my important dates. Any support will be proportional and temporary. I will not accept guilt that does not belong to me. Respect will be the first requirement of any conversation. If there is blackmail, the call ends. If there is gratitude, the doors open again. I reorganized the house as if it were my head. I took out old boxes and let light into sleeping corners. I put the sunflowers in the center like a flag. I threw away receipts that held old anxieties. Every bag in the trash was a piece of guilt gone. I made myself a cinnamon tea and toasted my reflection. "Welcome, Susan, who chooses herself," I murmured. The house sounded different, as if it were breathing with me. I practiced my voice, saying no in different tones. "No, honey. I cannot, honey. Not today, honey." I called Brenda to tell her, and she listened without judgment. She told me I was not crazy. I was brave. She offered to be with me when the storm hit. I accepted because bravery also knows to ask for support. I do not want to fight. I want to set things in order. I repeated that like a pocket prayer. That night, the doorbell rang, and my heart leaped. I looked through the peephole and saw Megan with a frown. I took a deep breath, opened the door, and left the fear outside. She had her phone in her hand, ready to talk about payments. I had my folded letter and my voice in its place. The break had already happened inside. Now it was time for the outside. I knew this conversation would change our story. And even trembling, I felt ready to begin the fight. Megan sat across from me with that characteristic hurry of hers. She took out her cell phone and started showing me numbers and dates. I looked at her, but this time my eyes were not distracted. I felt something inside me was stronger than the fear. It was not rage. It was clarity. My heart was pounding in my chest, but my voice wanted to come out. "Megan," I said slowly, and she looked up, surprised. "Today we are not going to talk about hotels or promotions." She fell silent, frowning, waiting. I took a deep breath, searching within myself for the strength of my mother and all the women before me. "I want you to listen to me," I added, in a tone I rarely used with her. I felt the words weigh like stones, but they were necessary. For the first time, I did not tremble when I looked her straight in the eye. I saw the reflection of her surprise, even discomfort. I knew there was no turning back. The decision was made. "I love you, honey, but this time I am not going to pay for your honeymoon." The sentence landed between us like an unexpected thunderclap. The silence that followed was louder than any scream. She opened her eyes, incredulous, as if she had not understood. "Mom, what do you mean, no? You always help me," she exclaimed. I nodded slowly, but without looking away. "Yes, I always did. But not anymore." And my voice sounded so firm that even I was surprised. Megan tried to laugh nervously, thinking it was a joke. "Mom, please, do not joke about this. The offer ends today," she insisted. But I did not smile. I did not hesitate. I remained silent for a few seconds that felt like an eternity. That silence was my shield. She started to wring her hands impatiently. A spoiled child's gesture. "I need you to do it now. You do not understand," she yelled, and I found myself calm in the face of her storm. "I understand perfectly," I replied serenely. "I understand that you always ask me. and never give me your presence. I understand that on my birthday, you did not even have time for a hug. And I understand that today, again, you are only thinking about yourself. My voice did not come out with rage. It came out with pained calm, the kind of calm that cuts deeper than anger. She looked down for a moment, nervous. For the first time, I noticed she had no answer. My heart was beating like a drum, but I did not back down. I took her hand, gently but firmly. I am not your ATM, Megan. I am your mother, and I want respect, not invoices. She pulled her hand away as if it burned. The gesture hurt me, but I did not regret it. It was the first time I had set a clear boundary, and I felt that line gave me back my lost dignity. Megan started to cry, but I do not know if it was from anger or helplessness. "So you are just going to leave me alone in this?" she demanded. I took a deep breath, not letting her tears manipulate me. "I am not leaving you alone. I am teaching you to walk." That phrase came out of my mouth almost without thinking, but as I said it, I understood it was true. I had raised a dependent daughter, and now I had to let her go. For her sake, but also for mine. Her crying tore me apart, but I stood firm. The temptation to give in was there, like a sweet poison, but I remembered all the times I swallowed my pain in silence. I remembered my birthday, my untouched cake, my loneliness, and I understood that if I gave in again, nothing would ever change. I held on to that certainty like a shipwreck survivor to a plank. "This is my decision," I repeated softly, and I felt a strange relief, as if I had dropped an enormous weight. Megan stood up, gathering her things angrily. "I cannot believe you, Mom. You disappoint me," she said in a harsh voice. That word, disappointment, cut me like a knife, but I did not let it show on my face. I just said, "One day, you will understand." She snorted, turned, and left, slamming the door. The echo reverberated through the house, but I remained standing, and my soul, for the first time in years, did not shrink. When the door closed, I was left alone, but not defeated. The silence in the living room was no longer empty. It was space I had reclaimed. I poured myself a glass of wine. My hands were still shaking. But this time, it was not from fear, it was from courage. I toasted myself like someone inaugurating a new chapter. The house smelled like freedom, though also like mourning. I knew this decision would cost me tears, but it would also save my soul. I turned off the lights and lay down on the sofa. The tears finally came, but they were not tears of defeat. They were tears of cleansing, of release, of healing. I felt alive, more alive than ever. I thought of my mother, how proud she would be of me. I thought of the Susan from a few months ago, incapable of saying no, and I hugged myself tightly, as if protecting myself. The brave decision had been made, and I would not regret it. The following days were a whirlwind of missed calls and cold texts. Megan wrote me short sentences loaded with reproach. "I thought I could trust you. You failed me. I did not expect this from you." Every word was like a poisoned dart straight to my chest. I read them in silence, holding back tears, but without responding. Not because I did not want to, but because I was afraid of falling into the guilt trap. I knew one yes was all it would take to undo all my effort, and I was not willing to give up now. Finally, one Saturday afternoon, Megan showed up at my door. She knocked hard, insistently, like someone demanding an explanation. When I opened it, her face was hardened with anger. "We need to talk, Mom," she said, walking in without waiting for my permission. I took a deep breath, ready to face the inevitable. My heart was pounding, but calm held me steady. I was no longer the same fearful woman from before. This time, I was the one who was going to talk. "How could you do this to me?" she snapped as soon as she sat down. "You have always supported me, and now, right now, you decide to leave me alone." Her words were daggers, but I did not blink. "Megan," I replied in a firm voice, "I did not leave you alone. I just set a boundary." She laughed sarcastically. "A boundary? You are my mom. You are supposed to be there for me always." The sentence hurt me, but it did not break me. "I am your mom, yes, but I am also a person," I answered, and my own words gave me strength. The atmosphere grew tense. You could cut it with a knife. Megan crossed her arms, defiant, waiting for me to give in. But I did not. I love you, honey, but I am not going to keep financing your life, I declared. She slammed her hand on the table, furious. You have no idea what you are doing to me. I looked at her serenely and replied, Yes, I do. What I am doing to you is giving you independence. Megan looked at me, incredulous, as if she did not recognize me. You were always my safety net, and now you are closing the door on me. Her eyes filled with tears, and for a second I saw the little girl I had raised. But that tenderness did not cloud my mind as it had before. I took her hand gently and said, I am not closing the door, honey. I am teaching you to knock on it with respect. She pulled her hand away sharply. That gesture was another stab, but I held my ground. And what if it goes wrong? What if I fail? She asked, her anger mixed with fear. I felt a lump in my throat, but I answered calmly. Then you will learn, just like I learned. Nobody rescued me, honey, and here I am. My eyes were shining, not with pride, but with truth. Megan looked down for the first time in the whole argument. Her silence was a small victory for me because she was finally listening, and I was not going to back down. She tried to turn the discussion toward guilt. Is this how you repay me for everything I did for you? She lashed out. I felt a burning in my chest, but I did not fall into the trap. Everything you did for me was live as my daughter, and I as your mother. Love is not a debt to be collected, Megan. It is honored. My words sounded firm, almost like a verdict. She opened her mouth to respond, but no sound came out. Silence once again filled the living room. I used that moment to open my heart to her. It hurt me that you did not remember me on my birthday. That day, I did not want gifts or trips or money. I just wanted a hug, a call with affection. And instead, I got an invoice disguised as a favor. Megan looked at me with red eyes, surprised by my honesty. I had never spoken to her like this before. That moment marked a before and an after. She began to cry, but not with tears of manipulation. It was a deep, almost childish cry, as if something in her had broken. Mom, I did not think it hurt you that much, she murmured. I listened to her in silence, my heart in my hand. Of course it hurts, honey, because you are my greatest love, I replied. The silence that followed was not one of reproach, but of naked truth. For the first time, I felt my words had entered her heart, even though the road ahead would still be long. Megan tried to justify herself, to talk about her problems, her stress. I listened to her, but I did not give in. It does not matter how busy you are. There is always time for an I love you. That costs nothing, honey, and it means everything. She covered her face with her hands, ashamed. I watched her in silence, in no hurry to fill the gaps. It was her turn now to face her own truths, and I was only going to accompany her, not to rescue her. The conversation ended without hugs, without full reconciliation. She left with heavy steps, without looking back. The door closed and left me in the middle of a thick silence. I stood there, trembling, tears finally rolling down. No eran lágrimas de derrota, eran de liberación. Había enfrentado a mi hija sin miedo, con dignidad. And although it hurt, I knew it was the beginning of a change. In her, and especially in me. The house fell silent after that confrontation, but it was no longer a silence that weighed on me. It was a silence that supported me. For the first time in a long time, I felt light, as if I had taken off a heavy sack. I lit a candle and let the wax drip slowly, marking a new beginning. I poured myself a glass of wine and toasted myself, without guilt. That toast was a different kind of celebration, intimate and powerful. I was not celebrating being alone. I was celebrating being with myself, and I discovered that this, too, was a gift. The following days were strange, a mix of pain and relief. Pain from Megan's words, from the tears that broke us apart, but relief because, at last, I had set a boundary that gave me back my respect. I got up early, opened the windows, and let the fresh air in. The house seemed different, as if it were breathing with me. The walls were no longer witnesses to my resignation, but to my awakening. I caught myself singing while I cooked. It was as if freedom had given me my voice back. I decided to do something I always put off: travel alone. I looked for a simple destination, a place I always wanted to go but never dared. I booked a hotel with my own savings, without asking anyone's permission. I packed my suitcase calmly, folding each item with excitement. I felt nervous, of course, but also a thrill I had not felt in years. It was as if the little girl I had buried inside me was coming out to play. As I closed the suitcase, I told myself, "Now, Susan, you live for you." And that phrase filled me with pride. The trip was a revelation. Waking up in a new place, walking down unfamiliar streets, breathing freedom. I sat in the town squares watching life go by, without rushing. I ate whatever I wanted, tried different flavors. I found myself smiling at strangers, feeling part of the world again. Nobody asked me for anything, nobody expected anything. Just me, by myself, deciding every step. It was a peace I did not remember feeling. In the midst of that trip, I reflected on my life. I do not regret what I gave, because I did it with sincere love. But I understood that loving also means setting boundaries. That saying no is not abandonment, it is teaching. That the true inheritance I can leave my daughter is not money, but dignity. And that I still have time to show her, through my actions, that another way of loving is possible. I held onto that truth like a shield. It was my new way of walking in the world. When I returned home, everything seemed brighter. I put fresh flowers in the dining room, this time for me. I bought a small cake and cut it without waiting for visitors. I put on music and danced alone in the living room, laughing at myself. That laugh was a prize, an invisible medal. I did not need witnesses to validate my happiness. Because freedom is not shouted, it is lived, and I was learning to live it. With Megan, the relationship did not change overnight. She remained distant, her pride wounded. But I no longer ran after her. I no longer debased myself for a text. When she called, I listened to her calmly, without giving in to blackmail. If she asked, I decided with freedom whether to help or not. That power of decision was my silent victory. And although it hurt to see the coldness, I repeated to myself, "No more chains." It was a different kind of pain, a consensual pain. One afternoon, Megan called me to ask for advice, not money. That gesture surprised me and moved me. We did not talk about accounts. We talked about feelings. For the first time in a long time, I felt she saw me as a mother, not a resource. I listened to her without reproach, with patience. And although it was a brief chat, for me, it meant a lot. It was proof that my decision was bearing fruit. That respect begins with oneself and then blossoms in others. Reclaiming my freedom also changed me as a woman. I dressed up for myself, bought myself flowers, gave myself quiet afternoons. I stopped carrying guilt that was not mine, and I began to feel pride in every wrinkle, every scar. They were not marks of defeat, they were medals of resistance. Every day I chose myself was a victory, and I understood that at 63 years old, I can still reinvent myself. I can still be happy, dignified, and free. Looking back, I see everything I endured in silence. The hidden tears, the nights of anguish, the abuse disguised as affection. And I hug myself for having had the courage to break that cycle. It was not easy, nothing is when it comes to family. But I learned that being a mother does not mean erasing yourself. That a woman also deserves respect, even if her children do not understand it at first. And that true strength lies in raising your voice when everyone expects your silence. That is the legacy I want to leave. Today, I celebrate my days differently. I do not wait for calls to feel loved. I do not expect favors in exchange for love. I celebrate with flowers, with music, with a hot coffee. I celebrate with my own company, which I have learned to value. Loneliness no longer weighs me down, it supports me. Because I discovered that I was never alone. I always had me. And that is the greatest freedom of all. Tell me in the comments what you thought of this story. What part touched your heart the most? And from where in the world are you joining us? I would love to read your thoughts. Because every experience unites us and reminds us that we are not alone on this journey. And do not forget to subscribe to the channel and activate the bell so you do not miss the next stories full of emotion, surprises, and life lessons. Here you will always find stories that inspire strength, dignity, and hope.